We are back for part 2 of The Creator Mindset. Fantastic book, and we're here with the author, Nir Bashan. Before we start, I want to thank our sponsor, Zai, boldly transforming the future of financial services with a suite of embedded products and services, enabling businesses to create multiple payment workflows and move funds with ease. Check out Zai at hellozai.com. Let's get into part 2 with Nir Bashan. Nir, did you have a nice break? Hopefully you had a coffee.
Did have a nice break, and I'm ready. I'm supercharged now for more creativity.
Where we finished off was with the trio, the superpowers of humor, empathy, and courage. And next, you say, much of our success is all about how we decide to spend and make the most of our precious time. The Creator Mindset has some unique tools and skills that can be applied to time management and, of course, listening more and talking less. Both are keys in allowing creativity to make a business or career far more effective. Let's share the next 3. So I mentioned there listening more and talking less. And I'm going to talk less here and pass it over to you because you say 3 things we can do here are look at meetings, look at micro listening, and of course, looking at shutting up, which I'll do now.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where I've worked with different groups and it's almost systematic, right? You see people who are like, Nir, we're a really inclusive environment. We listen to everybody and voices are so important, no matter where it comes from. It's like, great, that's the marketing material, right? And then I sit in on meetings and kind of go through this stuff with them, and it's amazing, right? It's just like one dude talking the whole time, right? Or like a certain group that tends to lead the meeting, and they're doing the whole lifting. They're the ones with the slide deck and everybody's sitting there. Nobody wants to be talked at. People want to be talked with and talked to. And so one thing that people can do immediately to become more creative is to just shut up, right? And listen to what's going on in meeting. What ends up happening is you have amazing creative ability that comes up when you're not the one doing all the talking all the time, right? So it is incredibly important to do listening. This is something that is a proven skill and actually comes from the intelligence community, right? So there's several studies that show that if you can befriend somebody, let's say you're doing an investigation or whatever, or even just allow people the space to talk, by talking, they will tell you all kinds of things that maybe they're not supposed to tell you, right? Now, at work, how do you use that, right? You're not you're not investigating somebody or, doing some kind of police work with your coworkers. What you're doing is you're trying to help them or trying to improve creativity. So what you do is you start to listen more. And as you listen, you let somebody talk and really express how they feel. You do that with a little bit of empathy, and you can actually derive a lot of action items from the fact that you are holding yourself back from speaking and you're waiting for somebody else to get their full idea out. And you're not just waiting to talk, right? Which is another common thing that people do. They're like, oh, Nir, I'm a good listener. Okay, cool. All they're doing is really just waiting to talk, right? They're waiting for the point where that person is done so that the other person can kind of take over. But when you really listen, you come up with a lot of creativity that person has that you can then use. It's an action item that you can take forward and use. It's an amazingly straightforward and simple method, yet it is something that a lot of people don't do. I break it up into micro listening and macro listening and different types of environments where that's appropriate. But basically, the bottom line is that next time you're in a Zoom or a GoTo or Teams meeting, whatever you guys use at work, and you're the one who's usually doing the talking or the presenting, hand it over to somebody. Say, hey, we all know about this initiative. I'm going to have Sally kind of walk us through it, and let her do it, or let somebody else do it, and listen to what's going on. Listen to how they approach it. Every human being, because our DNA is so tightly bound in creativity. It is the reason why we are alive today. Every human being will express creativity in a different way. It is our brand differentiator. It is who we are as human beings, and it's who we are in business too. And our companies ultimately follow that. So when you allow somebody to have the floor, then you really do some listening and take some notes and really experience through empathy what they are saying, you instantly create creativity. Next time you're on that Zoom meeting, put it on mute. If you get the urge to talk, put it on mute. If you're like, wow, I have something really important to contribute, put it on mute and listen to what other people are saying. Gather your thoughts, gather what other people are saying, and then unmute it and then say what you have to say, but only with the hindsight of having the contribution be from someone other than you.
It's funny, again, connecting the dots. And this is a beautiful thing, from having your own podcast. You have to listen. Like, there's nothing worse than a podcast host who makes it all about themselves. But it's great when you hit mute and you're listening because you're connecting dots between different things. But we had a great guest on the show. He's one of the highest viewerships of a TED Talk ever, Julian Treasure. And he had a book called How to Be Heard. And what was most interesting, he was talking about listening as the superpower of how to be heard, because it's like you create this almost debt with somebody where you've given them the time to speak and you've genuinely listened to them. But he said most people engage in what he called script writing as they're listening. So it's like, what will I say now when Nir's finished?
Yeah.
And now you have to do a little bit of that when you're doing a podcast like this. But I do try and react to what the guest is saying rather than just try and follow a script, because I think you can smell that a mile away and it's just not interesting.
It has a lot to do, Aidan, with authenticity. When you do listen, your responses become authentic. Your show becomes authentic. Your business becomes authentic. Your product or service becomes authentic. When you do exactly what you just said, you kind of fake it, people can smell a fake a mile away. And the one thing that always kind of, encompasses the fake is that listening component or lack thereof.
You're so right, man. And it's even down to one thing I'm really uncomfortable with is LinkedIn is a huge driver of audience for my own business, but also for the podcast, because I share links I share excerpts, as you know, on LinkedIn, and I struggle with talking about myself on LinkedIn. I the humble brag, incredibly humbled by, and then something brilliant that happened to me.
Right.
I really struggle with that because when I see people I know and they're like, so honored about this, and you're kind of going, you're a jackass. So I really do struggle with that.
I'm guilty of it, man. I do it. It's horrible, but it's so hard to talk about yourself and it feels so weird.
Yeah, it does. It really does. Getting back to, because another thing that I don't know if you struggle with this, but you mentioned it in the book, is celebrating the small victories. I mean, when I finished writing my book, even a guy I respect a lot, he's a great listener to the show, Phil Matthews, he said to me, he said, "You must be so happy about this book." And I was like, kind of going, oh yeah. I'm just thinking about the next thing all the time. And you talk about the importance of celebrating those small wins. Particularly, I think this is so poignant and apt for innovators and change makers, because we don't do that. Because we've always our eye on the big prize and we don't take time to actually celebrate those wins. Previous guest on the show, Shannon Lucas, she calls this breadcrumbing, not only because of celebrating the small wins, like you say, but she said sometimes, like if you work in a legacy organization, others don't want you to succeed because that means change the organization. And you need to point to the breadcrumbs and go, I did that, and that. But to a change maker, that seems, again, a little bit like the LinkedIn post, a little bit of talking too much about yourself.
Definitely. It's really the concept of the little victory is something that has come to me through years of getting it wrong, right? So everything in the book I've violated every which way you can imagine. I was the loudmouth in the meetings that talked all the time and didn't let other people talk. I forced my way through business dealings, and I would like, analytics are everything. Show me the numbers. We make decisions on numbers. I was that guy.
This interview's over, man.
Yeah, I mean, everything has been violated every which way possible, and it's settled at the end of the day on a path that worked. And the path that worked is to celebrate those little victories, man. You have to. And what we find a lot of times, and I'm sure you find this with the people you work with too, is that everybody's so fixated on that 1 year, the 3 year, the 5 year, whatever the vision is. I just got off a meeting with a client and they were like, dude, our vision is this. And it was super lofty. I'm like, great. How long have you guys been working on it? That's our 5-year vision. And our CEO said that we're going to, oh my God. It's like, innovation through technology or whatever. It's like, what does that even mean? Like, I don't even, so yeah, I get it. Having a 1 year, a 3 year, or 5 year, it's important, right? It's an important operational goal, right? To have some performance metrics and stuff in place. Okay, that's fine. That's the analytics. It's good. Let's not get rid of it. Let's keep it. But what happens is when you don't balance that with some creativity, it becomes something that like it's like a motivational poster. You can do it. People look at it and they're like, I want to punch that thing. Like, like you go to the break room and you see a poster. It's like, you can do it. And that doesn't motivate anybody. That antagonizes people, right? It makes them angry. So the little victory is really about taking those little things that happen along that way of your 5 year and making a big deal of it, right? It's getting a chapter done if you're a writer, an author that's trying to get a book done. And it's taking a moment to just celebrate those little things. Now, what I found that is really interesting is that these breadcrumbs, as your previous author or guest talked about, might just lead you to a different payoff than what you thought it would. Okay. So I work with groups a lot of times. This is amazing, Aidan. I'm sure you found this, and maybe this will resonate with your listeners. I work with people who are like, Nir, my 5 year is that, or my 3 year is that, and we're going over there. And every single thing that they do in their life at work, it's pointing them in a completely different direction. And every day they go to work and they fight and they fight and they fight. And they're going in this other direction because like, oh, look, that's where my plan is. And the analytics take me there. And every single fiber of their being is telling them to go a different way. I talk about this in a keynote that I do about innovation, where there was a ice cream salesman many years ago who wanted to sell a bunch of ice cream machines. His 5 year was to sell a shitload of ice cream machines to everybody on earth, and it's going to be great. That was his 5 year. And he set up the entire business to do that. The outbound calls, the client relationships, everything was set to do that. And he had a customer in California that kept ordering machines over and over again. And he was like, oh, that's cool. It's just another account. And then one day he was like, you know what? Something's going on here. I got to get a little bit creative. I got to see why it is that person keeps ordering machines. Now, any analytical view of that would tell you not to do that. Any business school MBA will tell you not to do that, right? Why? Because you got to get on a plane. That costs money. You lose time and money and efficiency because you're not manning the phones or whatever, getting out there doing the sales. You lose money on traveling. You're out of pocket because you're in an airplane, so you can't make phone calls or get on the internet or whatever. Not that any of that existed at my particular story, but anyway, you're not available. So this guy looked at all the analytics and said, you know what, I'm going to go out there anyway. So he went out to this restaurant, spent like a week traveling, and finally gets to the restaurant. The line's out the door, 45-minute long wait, right? You get to the counter, and he orders a hamburger and a milkshake, right? The milkshake was made with his ice cream machines, but he's like, shit, I'm hungry at this point. So he has a hamburger, and it's the best hamburger he's ever had in his entire life, right? The best hamburger, the best cheeseburger ever. And that guy's name was Ray Kroc, and the restaurant was McDonald's. So while we're so busy trying to navigate towards where we think we need to go, sometimes life along the way points you in a different direction. Aidan, it's incredibly important that we listen to that different direction, because that is creativity, trying to bubble up through your consciousness and trying to guide you in a way that you perhaps should go in the beginning. And what's more is that Ray enjoyed the restaurant business a million times more than the grind and the crap and the, all these negative words that have to describe what he felt like going to work as an ice cream machine salesman. Right? He hated that. He loves hamburgers. Let's do hamburgers all the time. It's okay to allow your little victories to point you in the way that you really do need to go. We just have to listen to those things and have the courage to execute that path.
It speaks also to something you talk about in the book is about sometimes we're overly focused on that goal. And even if it's in the wrong direction, we're so focused on it. And a great advocate of our show, and he sends loads of traffic our way, is, I don't know if you know Andrew Huberman. He has a magnificent podcast called The Huberman Lab, all about the brain and about eyesight, etc. But while you get a load of this, Nir, he said, if they use eye tracking, for example, and they look at an eye looking into a woods, right? If the eye is stressed, and the eye to be stressed is focused. So if you are interested in somebody, say somebody you find attractive walks past you on the street, the eye dilates, it's stressed, right? Equally, if you see something that is a threat, the eye dilates and it's stressed, right? So it's that type of eye. And then if the eye is relaxed and if you're in the creator mindset, essentially, your eye is constricted, so it's nice and narrow. And when they look on the reversed angle of you looking into woods, when it's stressed, it will only see one tree in the forest. But if it's constricted and it's relaxed, it will see the forest for the trees. It will see them all. And when I read about that, I was like, oh, wow, that's exactly what happens in organizations when it's like, we're going this way. And that focus is great. But focus also makes you miss so many other things. And that's what we're going to talk about next, because you talk about the importance of one of the things that happen is in that what you call mistake utility, which is when you make a mistake, when you're so hell-bent on where you're going, you can miss magic. And one of the great examples you give comes from 1928 and a man called Alexander Fleming.
The mistake utility is incredibly important. It's a creative tool that allows you to use mistakes for the benefit of your business. And in some cases, like the story you're referring is the change of humanity, right? So we have a scientist who got kind of tired of doing research because he was working on trying to get to a certain level, and none of the experiments were able to point him in that direction. And then finally, he said, you know what, I'm going to leave it all, go on a little vacation and come back with a fresh mind and a fresh way to look at it. And, he came back and looked at this, the test tubes or whatever that he left under a microscope, and saw that all this bacteria that he was growing is starting to be eaten by this thing, and literally discovered penicillin by mistake. He didn't set out to discover this. He was working on a cold or some kind of like flu vaccine or treatment or something like that. It's amazing. Yet today in business, we don't let mistakes happen. A buddy of mine named Bill Wooditch wrote a book called Fail More. Fail More. It's really, really good. It's a McGraw-Hill release. And basically the entire book is about why you should make more mistakes in your business and like how you can learn from those. And everybody's so scared right now of making mistakes because, we're post-pandemic, maybe not. Like, I don't, there's a war in Ukraine and like, this is the worst time to do anything. And my creative view is that this is the best time to do anything, right? You have inflation in the US at, I don't know, like 8%. It hasn't been this high since, I don't know, the 80s, 40 years ago, right? And you have all this hybrid work. Some people are working from home. Some people are in the office. There's a lot of conflict there. Like, oh, what are people doing? This is the best time to make mistakes because, quite frankly, you have someone else to blame, and that's kind of cool, right? So if you're trying to take a risk on an idea and using mistake utility, right now is the time to do it. Because if it doesn't work, you go, oh well, inflation sucks. So obviously that idea didn't work, which is great because you have a scapegoat, right? So what I'm trying to help people do is learn to kind of love that mistake and really extract meaning and extract some kind of forward momentum from making that mistake, because ultimately everybody, me included, probably times 10, will make mistakes along their path in their business. And the value is learning from what happened and making sure that, it doesn't happen again through a set of solid lessons learned. There is no innovation. There is no creativity. There is no forward momentum on any of this stuff unless we make mistakes. And sometimes those mistakes are more powerful than having gotten it right in the first place.
One of the things you talk about later on, and we'll talk about in a sec, is fear. And that fear cripples people about even admitting the mistakes. But even if you had a culture that admits the mistakes, you can fix the process quickly instead of blaming the person, as Toyota have. It's the 5 whys, not the 5 whos, trying to find the culprit, who did this, etc. Yeah. But one of the things that is so tied to this, again, I mentioned, for example, I worked in that corporate bureaucratic organization. And you talk about, imagine you had a manager who is so tied up in their ego, they're so fearful. What are they going to do? They're going to quash the ideas of anybody around them. It's the tall poppy syndrome. They keep everybody low so they look high. And I thought about how this is so dominant in so many organizations. People are afraid to put their head above the parapet. And as a result, no creativity comes from organizations. And you talk about this, the crippling aspect of ego in life, but also in organizational innovation.
Ego is one of those things that really, really kills ideas. And, it exists everywhere. In any business, any product, any service, any initiative has a sense of ego. Those things can be overcome, right? The power of the idea is such that, it will always find a home. That's the thing. It might not be an instant gratification thing, but eventually these things find where they need to go. A lot of times people today especially want the get rich quick thing, or, hey, I came up with an idea and I got rich quick. It happens a lot in podcasts. I've noticed people are like, I put 5 podcasts out. Why am I not Joe Rogan? How long have you been podcasting before you've reached your level of success?
6.5 years, man. 6.5
Yeah,
years.
and you're one of the top podcasts on innovation anywhere in the world. You didn't start 6 minutes ago. I mean, you started 6.5 long. Plus all of the work before then to get the concept, to get the format. Do we go longer? Do we go shorter? Every single business is exactly the same. There is a lot of pre-work done before the product hits the market. And assuming that these ideas are get rich quick or everything happens so fast or whatever, because I read about something on Instagram, some kid who made, $1 million and now he's showing us how to do it on YouTube. It's like that's not the reality, and that does not exist. So what ego does is it pretends that exists, but ultimately good ideas will live forever if they are stuck to and if they're adhered to. People tell me all the time, Nir, this is great. I work at a company, my boss is a complete asshole, and I cannot get any good ideas off. And I tell them, yeah, well, it might be time to find a new job. And people are like, well, but it won't work, blah, blah, blah. No, it might not work. If you work at Coke, you might need to go work at Pepsi. Or if you work at Pepsi, you might need to go work at Coke. You have to let your ideas get out there and not be afraid of sort of, the victimization of things. That's what I'm saying, Aidan. It's like you have to understand that when we look at things from a victim mentality and not a creator mindset, we get nowhere in life. It's always someone else's fault. It's not my fault. There's ego at work. My idea will never go forward. It's like, then what are you doing? What are you doing to get it to move forward, right? People, it's incredible. People think of work as like an extended family or like some kind of like love nest where everybody, oh, we can't have anybody have an idea that's not, everybody has to feel loved and all that stuff. What? Listen, you're there to contribute to the bottom line of that company. If that's a nice and friendly and warm and fuzzy environment, great. If that's what you're looking for, great. Go work at those companies because they're out there. If you want the kind of company that is forward looking at ideas and stuff, might not be a warm and fuzzy company, right? Your current position might need to be changed. And people hate hearing that. They're like, how could you? I need tools to help me deal with my asshole boss. It's like, yeah, dude, there are situations where you are working is the fundamental problem to escaping creativity. And your fear of change is what's holding back your creativity. Because if you have an idea and you believe in it that much, and you have the courage to go out there and say, hey, this is a really good idea, why are you working for someone else? Go execute that idea for yourself in your own business. But a lot of people don't do that because it's really scary and all of the scary fear that comes along with it. Or if you don't want to take that leap, go to a competitor or go work in a different industry that has the same sort of mentality or whatever. We live in unprecedented times of prosperity. 100 years ago, the life expectancy was something like 50. 55 was old. Unprecedented time in medicine, in technology, in tools that help humanity. Believe me, I think we can be like 10 times better than where we are now, but we do have that at our disposal. So if you are working somewhere and you're like, oh, I'm kind of stuck. No, my ideas aren't being, listened to or whatever, you got to try. There are different methods. I talk about it in the book. You can look it up online. But at a certain point, you got to cut your losses and say, okay, maybe I need to stop the victim mentality. Maybe I need to go somewhere else.
I love it, man. I think that so many people are crippled by fear, and that's linked to ego. What will people think, etc. And I often think I write a weekly article, and I wrote about this last week. There's a quote by Marcus Aurelius, and he said, I have often wondered how it is that every man or woman loves himself more than all the rest of man, but yet sets less value on his own opinion of himself than on the opinion of others. We cling to that idea. What will they think? They, screw they. It doesn't matter about they. It's about you and your family. Write your own screenplay and be the star of that screenplay yourself, I say. And I definitely, it's one of the reasons I reached out to you. I love books like this and people who think this way, because the more we can share that, hopefully we can flavor how others think, and they can go and pursue dreams that they all have deep inside them as well. But I wanted to quote the next part because, man, I want to bear in mind for our audience, Nir wrote this book before the pandemic, because this next quote that I have is prophetic of what happened. Yes, you may be stuck in an organization, but you may have tasted some really toxic leadership during the organization, because there's a great saying that any turkey can fly in a storm. So when things are prosperous and things are going well in the business environment, or you're a coach of a sports team and you're winning all the games, you can look great, you can talk a great game. We've seen this with Netflix at the moment. Netflix, we're all watching you to see how you react now with no rules when the company has taken a hit in the stock market, etc. And you said, in good times, it is easy to be a hero. It doesn't take much effort to show fine character in fair weather. Things are going well after all. Clients are responding and buying. Your career is going well. Promotions are beckoning and margins are healthy. But what happens when the ship takes on a bit of water, or a lot of water, and starts to sink? In bad times, character is put to test. Many, many people, including myself, I experienced this in the last organization I worked in. When things did not go well, the leader, the so-called leader, took on, well, maybe they didn't take on a different character. It revealed who the real person was underneath. It revealed their real character. And this is something you point out. We need to work on our personal character and also realize the character of those around us.
I think the bad times reveal who people really are, not the good times, right? Anybody can be a hero when things are good, but when things are bad, it really shows how things really are. And people tell me all the time, Nir, I'm not in leadership, I'm in management, or I'm a senior, accountant at one of the, big three accounting firms. I don't know, whatever. I don't, I'm not in the C suite. I don't have any power. What power do I have? And that is completely false, because when you look at it creatively, your character, when a storm is going around you, is who you are. It's your DNA, and it is an incredibly important thing that you can control. You might not be able to control what happens, but you can always control how you react, always. And that is an incredibly powerful and an incredibly effective thing to do at work, right? Because when the ship is taking water and you're not in leadership, you have several options there, right? People are always like, well, I had no choice and I had to do this. It's completely false. You always have a choice on how you react, right? And so if everyone around you is like, screaming their heads off and you're the one that maintains cool, well, when things eventually correct, guess who's going to be looked at as being a superstar? It's going to be you. Why not be that person, right? It's not that hard to say, you know what? I'm not going to get involved in this group mentality and this, crowd mentality of how everybody's reacting because the CEO is doing it. I'm going to be a beacon of hope. Just because you've decided to do that, you instantly become that. Now, if you're a leader, you also have those same choices, right? You can either, fly off the handle like everyone else, or you can say, you know what, this is an opportunity for us to grow. And I promise you, that most innovation and most creativity in the last 50, 60, 70 years in companies throughout the world has come from perilous times. Has come from something gone really, really wrong. And the leadership's reaction and the day-to-day employees' reaction is incredibly important in finding innovative ways to transition from that. I talk in the book about the Tylenol crisis. I don't know if people remember, it was a little while ago, and there was some wacko terrorist who poisoned cyanide inside of Tylenol pills and sold it, right? And so people bought he went into a pharmacy, opened it, put the poison in there, and people died. It was horrible, horrible, horrible thing. A lot of people died from this tainted Tylenol. And you could imagine that, the Tylenol people were like, what the good heck is going on here? And so, they did some research and found out, hey, it's not our factory, it's not our whatever. And they had a choice at that point. They could have said, you know what? We don't know what's going on. This is the worst thing ever. We're being victimized and it's not us. And they could have done whatever they wanted, but they chose instead to do something which was unprecedented. And they chose to tell everybody, hey, we don't know what's going on, but we're going to look into it, which is awesome. Because how often do you have corporate responsibility these days, right? Where somebody tells you, I don't know what's going on, but I'm going to look into it. That's amazing. They did that as a company, right? And then what ended up happening was they found that this, guy did it or whatnot, but it led to a revolution in packaging. So the next time you're at the supermarket and you see that like your, cottage cheese has a plastic liner on it, it comes from that Tylenol crisis, because before this, nothing was sealed. Because who in their right mind would ever poison some food, cottage cheese or a gallon of milk or a medicine? Who would do that? Well, somebody did it. And now it led to all of these incredible innovations. The point is, you always have a choice in how you deal with these things. You always have a choice as whether you're going to fly off the handle or not. Character is incredibly important, and it counts in how you react, especially when things go wrong. And when they go really, really wrong is the point of incredible potential for innovation. It's up to you in your business, your product, your service, whatever your career, to recognize those moments and to seize the opportunities that come up with or that come out of things going wrong.
One of the things I mentioned earlier on is linked to this. So I succeed. I take on the creator mindset. I create a business and I'm enjoying my success. But with that complacency, our successes can often defeat us. And you say complacency comes in the creator mindset in 3 distinct flavors: early warning signs, exploitative sales, and then the paralysis of choice. And I'd love you to unpack these 3. We'll share these 3, another trio, and then I have a great story to finish, which involves breaking away from the past and recognizing your past at the same time, which is all to do with reinvention. So they're the 2 last topics we'll finish on. But let's tell our audience a little bit about the importance of recognizing complacency.
I'm a big case study kind of guy. Like, I love to look at different companies, different fields, vertical, and seeing what I can learn from them, right? I've spent a long time doing that, just because why not have someone else make a mistake and learn from it? It's the same net benefit to you. If somebody else or some other company makes a mistake and you learn something, great. It's the same as you making the mistake and learning from it. So the complacency comes in three different formats. One is really all about sort of, a paralysis of choice. That's when things are going really well, right? And everything is great. And you're having innovation, you're having people excited through the organization, and things are going really well. But at the end of the day, you don't execute any of them, right? That happened a lot. It's one of the things that brought down, quite literally, Pan Am Airlines, right? Pan Am had a lot of really great people. They used first computer reservations in the 60s. They had a computer that took up like 2 floors and handled reservations. It's amazing how innovative and incredibly good they were. Yet they faltered at some point. They had some terrorist activity. They were the first to institute all of this. They were the first to research the innovation behind security checkpoints and screening people and all that stuff. Yet they used none of it. It's amazing. They were like, they had the security scanners. They had the baggage belt that scans your thing and shows, oh, there's a metal object or there's something bad going on. They had every single one of those tools innovated by their different departments inside their company, and they chose nothing. So paralysis of choice is really like one way that a company can just go down the tube. The exploitative sale, there's a lot of companies that exploit people to sell stuff, especially online. It's horrible. But, if you watch YouTube, there's videos of, how to buy, a mega car. Everyone can drive a Lamborghini if you just follow my program, right? You pay the guy $29 and you watch the program, and guess what? You can't buy a Lamborghini, right? Because you can't afford it. So you pay this guy, and it's an exploitative sale. There's a Columbia House in the US used to do this thing where you send a penny and they would give you, some CDs.
The great composers. Do you remember that? I was a victim of this, man.
Of course, me too, because it's awesome. I want 10 CDs for a penny. And then you get into this program there where you have to hire a lawyer to get out of it. The timeshare industry is the same. They've got fundamental problems. The dealership industry in the United States, the car dealership industry is the same. It's an exploitative sale. I was on a really popular podcast, and I basically told them people hate dealers. That's why they're buying Teslas online. You guys have to do something. I'm sure you have, as a dealership organization, 57,000 members in the United States. Somebody had some good ideas. It's time to act on them. Like, what are you guys doing? Everybody's going to go online. You're going to lose that, corner dealership that sells Chevys. So that's an example of the exploitative sale. There's so many ways that we can get complacent that we have to sort of recognize those things, and we have to move forward in knowing that we might be getting into those traps.
I hate those exploitative sales, man. I was brought one of the most wonderful holidays I've had was bringing my kids to see Santa in Lapland. And when you go over there, it's like you stay in Santa Village and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But you're a hostage to like pretty average food with very, very high price.
Oh, I bet.
And I find this always with those places, like the food for sale in a cinema or in a play, in an amusement park or something like that. And they hike up the prices because you're a hostage and you can't.
What are you going to do? You're hungry.
Yeah, you have no choice. I hate that. Ryanair, they're still surviving as well, but that type of mentality,
yeah,
just makes you resent the brand. You're like kind of going, come on, that's Like it's 2022 here. Come on.
People build an entire business around that. It's amazing. How can you do? Eventually, you're just going to piss off enough of your customers to go, you know what? Forget this.
Absolutely. As Blockbuster knows, well, too late, too little, too late. So I mentioned, I thought a great way to finish would be in a kind of a shocking story that will surprise many people. And I talked about this before. I don't know if you know the story of the Coca-Cola's Fanta. You know that brand, they have Fanta, the orange drink.
Yeah.
So Fanta,
I know the song.
Fanta,
Fanta.
Fanta actually was invented in Germany, in Nazi Germany, and it was invented there when there was a ration on things like sugar, and they couldn't get the ingredients, Coca-Cola company, to make Coca-Cola. So Fanta comes from the word Fantasia, which means imagination in German. And what it was the leader of the team in Germany, the Coca-Cola company, he's like, look, let's use our Fantasia, our imagination here, and come up with a drink. So they were taking orange peels and lemons and syrups and stuff, and they made Fanta, right? But the reason I mention it is many organizations that are very successful have murky pasts. And what Coca-Cola did was, when they released this almanac of the history of Coca-Cola, they didn't mention anything about that. And you cannot escape the past.
Wow.
And you introduce, I'm teeing this up nicely, I hope, for you. You introduce the same with another company that some people might not know, and it will surprise people. So I'll introduce this concept firstly of breaking away from the past and then recognizing your past, because these are essential for the concept of reinvention. That is essentially what innovation is all about. And I'll introduce this concept, and you can take it away with a beautiful paragraph here. You say, Porsche, started, or do you say Porsche in the US?
It's Porsche, yeah.
You say Porsche. I say Porsche. Porsche started as a car company that made vehicles for the Nazis. Ferdinand Porsche, the owner, invented the VW Beetle for Hitler. And under Porsche's parent company, Volkswagen, and I always call out Volkswagen, you did that Dieselgate, Volkswagen. You're not getting away from it. Not on this show. Even though that means you'll never be sponsored. I don't care. We're very happy with Zai, our sponsor. So Volkswagen, and they had their own concentration camp called an Arbeitsdorf, which means a working village, at which prisoners were forced to make cars, tanks, and other vehicles. Their focus at the time was tanks and submersibles, vehicles that would drive the German army on their conquest of Europe, spreading Nazi ideology far beyond the borders of their home country. But soon the war was over and the Allied forces had won. However, this story is not about the past, you tell us, it's about the future. How in the world was Porsche able to transcend its murky history as a car manufacturer that fed the Nazi war machine? Over to you to tell us, how did they do it?
Yeah, it's a great question. I've been on like 500-600 podcasts now. You're the first to ask about this.
Damn straight, man. You're not getting away with it.
Hats off to you, man. Hats off to you. Yeah, a lot of people don't want to talk about the past because it's too, it's like, like people don't want to go there, but you have to talk about it. You have to get it out there, and then you have to improve. So what Porsche did was something really, really kind of special. It's unique. They realized that this is how they started. I mean, it's legit. We worked with their archives quite a bit to pull some information, and it was painful. I got to be honest with you, man. It wasn't like they were like, oh, here's some emails and stuff. They're like, what are you doing? What are you writing? And we had to get a lot of information across so that they understood how we're positioning it and what we're saying. But it's basically the truth, and the truth has to get out there. So yes, they were 100% complacent in Nazi Germany in the history of World War II, and they managed right after the war to do something incredible. The owner, the guy who founded Porsche, died shortly after the war. He was actually in prison. It's kind of a crazy story. But he died and his son took over. And his son said, you know what? We have to break from the past and move on to the future. And our future is motorsports, and our future is racing. And we need to double down on what it is that we're really, really good at. And that's what they did. They broke from the path and they moved forward. And then at some point in the late 90s, people were starting to talk about this again, right? There's a Bayer has a huge history in the Nazi war machine. The people who make aspirin. There's several companies that have histories there that haven't been as good as Porsche about talking about it. So, they put out some paperwork, they put out a fund. It was largely symbolic because they didn't have, any Holocaust survivors take them up on their money. But they put a fund out there and said, hey, we're really sorry about what we've done. This is an embarrassment to our company. It's out there. You can see it on their press releases and stuff like that. We have had a dark past. We've learned from it. We've recognized it, we've cut it off, and now we make motorsport vehicles. And they're one of the most beloved brands in the world. So the murky past of a company, the murky past of a human being is not necessarily a deterrent to doing good later, right? The rehabilitation of an evil is the meaning of life, literally. I mean, it is literally the fabric of what it is that we need to be focusing on. Like, there are people that do things that are evil in the world, right? And there's people that do things that are incredibly positive. And just because somebody or a company that's done something really bad at one point doesn't mean that that transformation and that transition can't occur. So for them, the main part was cutting off any connection with the Volkswagen bug and all that stuff. They gave all of the paperwork and all of the stuff, the engineering stuff, to Volkswagen, and they said, run with it. We're making the 356 and we're later the 911 and the 912, and we're literally going to march forward on making performance race cars that people can own, that people can love, that have nothing to do with a mass-produced vehicle. They're still that way today. They make, I don't know, maybe 100,000 cars a year, maybe 150,000 cars a year. They will never be a mass producer. They will never make, a Skoda or, a Honda Civic. It's not their business. Their business is exactly where it needs to be. They recognized the path. They made amends for it as best as they could. And they're moving forward now in an incredible transition into one of the world's most beloved brands. So, this is also applicable to the Tylenol people, right? You could say that they were hit really hard, but they also recognized it and they moved forward. So it doesn't matter what happens; it really matters how you deal with it, how you make it right, and how you move forward.
I just wanted to close the loop on it. Like I am really annoyed about Volkswagen, because when Volkswagen did the Dieselgate, the next year they were the most popular brand, because they own Skoda and they own Porsche and those other brands. It was like kind of going, let's put all our energies into Skoda now, and the Volkswagen parts. That does annoy me, and I constantly look myself in the mirror and kind of go, where am I doing that? Where am I being hypocritical of that in my life? The whole thing about sustainability, particularly because Dieselgate has had such a profound impact on the planet. Like, I mean, these things are huge for people. So anyway, and the other thing is, for those people that don't know, Hugo Boss also made army uniforms for the Nazis as well. Like, and Swiss banks were involved in that. There's a huge murky past. But let's focus on the positives here. We're letting go of the past, and that's the whole idea. And I wanted to share an interesting thought that came to me, and we did a magnificent 4-part series with a brilliant guy called Jeffrey West, who wrote a book called Scale. It's a brilliant book. But in the book, he talks about growth and how growth happens. So if you think of metabolic growth, one of the questions he posed, he goes, why does an organism stop growing later in life? Well, the reason is, in the early years, and I saw this as an analogy for organizations, but also what you're talking about here. In the early years, most of the energy of an organism is in growth. It's interested in growth. But as the organism gets bigger, much of that energy goes into maintenance and repair. And then, nearly at the end, all the energy is going into repair. and you run out of metabolic energy and you just can't recycle. And if you think about that, well, the waste product of all that is bureaucracy, administration, and a lack of creativity. But I just thought that was a nice little link for all of this. But Nir, I loved our show. I loved our episode. I have a quote. I usually finish on a quote, and I have a quote from me. But while I'm doing that, I didn't want to just put you on the spot. I'd love if you finish off today's show and signed off today's show with your own quote and your own call to action that perhaps you use from your keynotes, perhaps something that you call out to organizations as well. But I'll give this little quote here. Before I do, where can people find you for those who didn't hear us in part one?
NirBashan.com, NIRBASHAN.com. I'm incredibly easy to find. I'm on social. I'm on all the LinkedIn and Insta and all that stuff. NirBashan.com.
Awesome. And here's my quote, and then I'm going to hand it over to you. Through the lens of the creator mindset, even widely held beliefs and the ensconced analytical status quo are open to challenge. Creativity releases an internal light of truth that will shine brightly in all the dark corners of your career, your business, and your world. What will you uncover by looking at your world creatively and challenging established views? I thought that was a nice way. It speaks to the spirit of this show and the spirit of the audience of this show. Over to you, Nir, for your final call to action.
That's a good quote. I wish I would have wrote that. For me, it's really about, understanding that we're all creative and there's a very special gift in that, and giving that away and developing it, I think, is as important as developing mathematical skills and people skills and every other skill. So my parting words are that creativity is something that can be learned, and it is incredibly important to learn it. It just takes the will to do so. And so I hope over the last couple of shows that we've done together, Aidan, people get inspired to do a little bit more digging and a little bit more work on becoming creative.
Author of The Creator Mindset, 92 Tools to Unlock the Secrets to Innovation, Growth, and Sustainability, Nir Bashan, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for having me.